So hello everybody, welcome to this Facebook Live where I'm going to be talking about MECFS and dealing with grief. Just let me know you can see me and hear me and also see my slides. And I'm just going to put a message in the chat so I know it's working. Just let me know you can see and hear, because I just want to make sure I'm not talking to myself. Robert saying hi. Hello, thanks for letting me know. Hi Becky. So thanks for that. Thanks for letting me know that you can see me. All right, so let's begin. So someone in my group posted the following comments about dealing with grief. They said they want some tips for grieving the loss of a past life whilst working on recovery. Lee's saying hello. Melanie saying thank you everybody. Becky saying can't see me. Maybe you could see my slides. Can you see me now? Just let me know. So this person said that they're comparing their life to how it was and comparing their life to other people who are active. They feel too unwell to see people, as in not having enough energy to put on a brave face. They don't want to talk about the problem, or they don't want to compound the problem by talking about it. Hi Francesca. They said they find it difficult seeing others because they can do stuff that I used to do. So it's hard to see anyone, as it impacts on the loss and grief, makes me more upset. It's easier to hide away for now until I can function in the real world. So I get what you're saying, and the first thing I want to say is, I really feel for you, because I know what that's like to have been there, because I experienced that myself. Having MECFS is challenging when you can't do all the things you want to do, and people even with MECFS have a whole range of abilities. Some people can do very little, some people are working full-time but having to rest the rest of the time. So it's completely understandable that you experience and feel that grief. I want to just make a couple of comments about some of the points that this person said. So first of all, they said they're feeling too unwell to see people, as in not having the energy to put on a brave face. And I suppose I'd just like to make the distinction between not seeing people because we're not feeling well enough, and not seeing people because we haven't got the energy to put on a brave face. And a question that raises for me is, what would it be like to not put on a brave face? It might be that you're concerned that you might just feel really upset. But is it okay to show some upset? And would that upset last, or would it pass? Because I just feel like, is it the case that you're actually depriving yourself of some human contact? And I'm wondering whether that just feeds into the sense of loss. So that's just a question. And it's going to be different for different people. So just something to think about. But for me, I'd really want to be weighing up what are the benefits of not having contact with other people versus what are the costs of doing that. The other point the person says is, I don't want to compound the problem by talking about it. And what I'd say about that is, sometimes we need to talk about it. And obviously we need to be selective about who we talk to. There are going to be some people who are not receptive to hearing us talking about our situation, but there are other people who may be more receptive and have the capacity just to listen. And that can be helpful. So that's just something else to think about. And in relation to saying it's easier to hide away, again, I get that, but I just get you to consider, excuse me, I had a big spoon of almond butter before this call because I was feeling a bit peckish. And it's tickling my throat, so excuse me a sec. So yeah, what are the benefits versus the costs of doing that? Okay. Now, grief, is a natural process. And if we don't allow it, we can get stuck. Because resistance to what is just causes us pain, causes us stress, and that activates the fight-flight mechanism. If we think about... I don't know why my... Okay. If we think about, what are your goals? And if we think about where we are now, where we want to be in the future, then, people I work with, their goal is health and energy, and they want to be able to get on with their life. But unfortunately, what I found working with people, and this is something I experienced myself, is that sometimes we are doing things that actually move us away from our goals. Okay? And so we've really got to be aware of that. Okay? Are the patterns of behaviour that I'm getting into, are they actually helping me move towards my goals? For instance, an example of that is beating ourselves up, giving us a hard time because we've overdone it. Actually doing that just moves us away from our goal. Whereas, for instance, if we were just being more kind and compassionate to ourselves when we had a dip because we've done too much, then that's going to help us move towards our goals because we're actually accessing the parasympathetic state that helps the body heal and recover from that situation. So yeah, we need to be aware of that. If we're resisting what is, then actually that results in more of the same. Okay? Reacting to our situation tends to propagate the situation. So some of the mistakes I see people making around kind of dealing with grief is, first of all, we can shift from feeling the emotion. I was going to do a unisex person, but here we go. So we can shift away from experiencing the emotion and sitting with the emotion. What we tend to do as human beings is that our mind kicks in, okay? And we start telling ourselves all sorts of things. We interpret our experience in a particular way, and that results in feelings, okay? So, for example, if someone is saying, I can't do the stuff that I used to do, am I ever going to get better? Probably I'm not going to get better. That's just going to cause a lot of pain. Whereas actually, if we're able just to sit with this emotion, I'm feeling sad right now, I'm feeling grief, then that can actually pass. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. We can either experience the emotion or we go to our mind, create all sorts of story, all sorts of catastrophizing, all sorts of drama, and then that results in feelings which just cause us more pain. Okay, and one of the things I notice is that people can be very good at really associating into their pain. So I have actually made a video about this, about how we can associate and disassociate. And I will put the link in a PDF and share that in the file section of my Facebook group. So if you'd like access, I'll put a link to a couple of videos which relate to some of the stuff I'm talking about in this Facebook Live. So if you'd like to access that, do join my Facebook group and look in the file section. I'll put a link to a video on the power of the mind, and also a link to video on neuroplasticity, because the point here is whatever we practice, we get good at. So if we keep repeating this pattern here of going to our mind and having these feelings, then in the pathways in the brain get stronger. Okay, and actually it's a real skill to be able to just observe our emotions, feel our emotions, and let them pass. Another point I want to make relating to what this person said was about comparing. Okay, they talked about comparing themselves to what they used to be able to do back here, and that never makes us feel good. Okay, if we're comparing ourselves to, I used to be able to do, I used to be able to go running in the past, play sport, go out partying and stuff. I can't do that now. Then, that just results in us feeling more feelings of sadness, grief, etc. Comparing ourselves to others equally, actually in most situations, we tend to do it in a way that's not very helpful. Okay, so when I work with people, I teach them how to break these unhelpful patterns. Okay, obviously that's a bit beyond the scope of this Facebook Live, but I'm going to give you a few tips. So let's talk about what we can do. So the first thing is to allow the grief. And as I say, that means sitting with the emotions, okay, without going to our head and creating the story. Hope that makes sense. We also need to be able to cultivate compassion towards ourselves, because what I notice is that people can actually be pretty hard on themselves. You may be familiar with the work of Elisabeth Kubler-Ross. She talks about stages of grief. Those stages are denial, anger or frustration, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And obviously, acceptance is a really critical step. Now, we need to understand that grief is a process. It's not linear. We might switch between these steps, okay? There might be periods when those feelings are pretty intense. We might experience them in waves. We might have periods where they do feel intense for a period and then they soften or reduce. Okay. Now, Tony Robbins talks about is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? So yeah, 7th step. Okay, which is where we create anew. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and I'm going to ask you, what does that mean to you? This concept of creating anew. So I'm going to pause and just give you a moment to ponder that and maybe put your thoughts about that in a chat. What does that mean to you, creating anew? And I'd also be interested in terms of those steps, what your experience has been. Have you got to that place of acceptance? If not, what stage do you think you're at? I've talked about this before. I remember going to a party when I had MECFS. I was well enough to go for a bit. And I met this woman who had MS. And so we were talking a bit about our experience. And I was talking about the fact that I'd gone to see a doctor trained in nutritional medicine. And he suggested I make some changes to my diet, which were quite radical. I had to cut out sugar, so that meant no tomato sauce, no blueberry yogurt, which I really liked. And when I was telling her about this, she was saying, oh, I couldn't do that. And she was very resistant to making change that maybe might have helped in some way. And I know for me that actually just fine-tuning my diet was something that helped. And I was at the stage where I was able to do that, accept that I needed to make changes. Whereas it seemed to me that she was still in maybe the early stages of denial, anger. So Susan says, yes, fully recognise this. When widowed very young, went through these steps over several years, then accepted, although residual grief, I could begin to move on. You're very sorry to hear about that experience, but, glad you're able to work through it. So, yeah, pop your thoughts in the chat. Actually, let's just... So, yeah, sorry, I miscounted. So that's 6 steps. All right. So if you are feeling stuck, then actually Francesca's commented. So let's have a look. Francesca's saying, creating anew for me might mean starting from now. Yeah. So not comparing how I was before I got CFS and not dwelling on the past me. In terms of the lists, I move in and out of them. Yeah, that's really helpful, Francesca. I think that's, and I'll come on to that in a moment. I think that's a very important point, is that dwelling on the past actually doesn't keep us in the present. Okay. And one of the ways, and this is something I talk about when I train people, is one of the ways which we can cause ourselves difficulty is dwelling on the past in a negative way, or dwelling on the future in a negative way. And when we're doing either of that, we're just not being present. Okay. So Melanie says, for me, the stages aren't a linear process. I can move across different stages at different times. And Susan says she agrees with Francesca. Yeah, so that's important, Melanie. Yeah, it's not a linear process. We can shift between the stages. So if we are feeling stuck, then I can't remember where I came across this, but I came across this acronym, RAIN. Okay, if anyone knows who came up with it, then do let me know, because I always like to acknowledge people for, something that they've shared that I find really useful. So the R stands for recognize. Okay? Recognize what's going on. Okay? Thank you, Tara Brack. Melanie's saying that sounds familiar. The next step is to acknowledge. Okay, acknowledge our feelings. So that goes back to what I was talking about here. Just really acknowledge what's going on emotionally. And the next stage is to investigate. And for me, I am trained as an NLP practitioner, neuro-linguistic programming. And one of the things that is interesting about NLP is it's very curious to explore why some people are successful in certain areas and other people aren't. So, for example, if we got 100 people in a room who had experienced grief because they had MECFS, would they all respond in the same way? Clearly, they probably wouldn't. Some people might be handling the grief in more useful ways than other people. And that's without blame or judgment. Carol's saying Tara Brack as well, so thanks for that. So without judgment and with complete compassion, it's really useful to explore if someone is dealing with the grief in a more resourceful way, to get curious about what is it that they are doing. And so when I'm working with someone, I'm really interested to explore what is the recipe for our experience. So if someone is generating anxiety, for instance, there are some steps. Let me just go to my slides and I can share a little graphic. So first of all, we look at... We look at what is it we're focusing on. So this speaks to Francesca's point about not focusing on the past. If I'm just focusing on the past and focusing on all the things I can't do right now, that's going to cause me pain. That's going to put my physiology into a stress state. And what is the meaning we're giving this experience? You know, some people might be saying, you know, I can't get well. It's impossible. I'm not going to get well. I know what some other people have, but I'm not sure it's possible for me. I won't talk about points 4 and 5, but because there's a bit more to talk about there. But when I'm working with someone, I want to find out what is the relationships between what's going on an emotional level in terms of their physiology. How does that connect to what they're thinking? How does that connect to their beliefs and experiences? An example of that, I remember working with someone who had MECFS, and his wife had left him. Let me just turn that timer off. And he came to the training with a friend, and his friend was saying, look, it was a few years ago now. Really, I think we should be going out having fun, but you're still dwelling on everything. And it was a bit like, he'd be going down to make a cup of tea and he'd be saying to himself, I'd be making a cup of tea for my wife, and then he'd start feeling those sad feelings. And I get that, but at some point we have to say, okay, enough, I need to break this pattern. So this is what I'm really curious to explore when I'm working with someone. What is the relationship between what's going on emotionally? How does that relate to what's going on in our head, our beliefs, and our experiences? And if we go back to this point about point 1, what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on, number 1, the problem, or are we focusing on exploring solutions? If we've overdone it, are we focusing on I've failed, I'm an idiot, or are we focusing on this is feedback, what can I learn from this, what am I going to do differently? Are we focusing on the idea that it's impossible? Often I'm working with people and they are kind of saying to themselves, it's not possible. And one of the things I say to people is, if it's not impossible, it's 100% possible. Okay? So if we go back to one of the comments that this person said is, I find it difficult to see others. To think about what are we focusing on? If we're really focusing on, they can do X, Y, and Z and I can't, and what meaning am I giving that? Am I saying to myself, I have the belief that I won't get well? Then I start to really associate it into that. Imagine what my future is going to be like. Therefore, I start generating stress. That starts affecting my physiology, puts me in a state of fight or flight, and then, as I say, then that is moving us away from our goal rather than towards it. So let's just pause there. I'm trying really hard to make sure my Facebook Lives aren't too long, because some of them go on for an hour and some people have said that's a bit too long for them. So I'm trying to keep things short and sweet. But we'll end with a short relaxation. But if you've got any other comments, do pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll finish with a guided relaxation where I'll talk a bit more, feed in some of these ideas into that relaxation. So if you'd like that, just pop a yes in the chat. But if you've got any other comments or questions, do let me know. As I say, I will put a PDF in my Facebook group, MECFS Explored, with a link to a couple of videos. One where I'm talking about the power of the mind, how we can associate into two experiences in a powerful way that can either be unhelpful or helpful. And in one of the other videos, I talk about the power of the mind in terms of neuroplasticity, the way the brain works, and what we practice, we get good at. So do you have any tips on how to stop the emotions causing thoughts? So Robert, I'm actually going to do a little guided relaxation and I'll touch on that. So great question. And we'll do a relaxation now. So a couple of yes pleases and thank yous. You're welcome. So what I'd like you to do is to just make yourself comfortable and close your eyes. And obviously only close your eyes if it is safe to do so. I'm just going to put a little bit of music on. Do let me know if it's, or background sounds. Just let me know if it's too loud or too soft. And so yeah, as long as it's safe to do so, I'd like you to close your eyes. And I'd like you just to settle comfortably, either sitting in a chair or lying down. You may find it comfortable to uncross your feet. Just ensure you're positioned comfortably, and you can adjust your posture at any time as you allow yourself to enjoy this experience. As I guide you through this relaxation. So now just bring your awareness to your environment. Just having a sense of what you'd see if your eyes were open. The colours, the shapes, the textures. And now just bring your awareness to any sounds that you can hear other than the sound of my voice. Noticing any sounds that are close by and any sounds that are in the distance. And you can allow those sounds that you don't need to pay attention to wash over you. As you allow yourself to be guided by my voice. So I'd like you to take a deep breath, breathing in slowly and steadily. And as you slowly exhale, allowing your mind and body to relax. As you breathe in, noticing your chest rising, and as you breathe out slowly, notice your shoulders and chest fall. Once more, take in another slow breath. And as you slowly exhale, allowing your mind and body to soften and relax. And you can continue to breathe normally. And with every breath, allow yourself to feel more and more relaxed. And I'd like you to take yourself in your mind's eye to a place where you feel comfortable and relaxed and safe. Just see what you see in that place. Taking in your surroundings. Have an awareness of the sounds that you hear, the sounds that come and go. Notice the position of your body. The contact between your body and the surfaces touching your body. And as you relax in this place, I'd like you just to consider the following ideas. I'd like you to imagine an artist's palette, noticing the colours on that palette. Red, yellow, orange, green, blue, black, white, grey, brown, and any other colours. I'd like you to consider that you can mix those colours to create different shades. I'd like you to consider that having a range of colours on the palette means that the artist can create a variety of work. The artist may create pieces that are full of colour, or they may just use a few colours to create a certain feeling in their painting. In the same way, I'd like to consider that part of the human experience is having a whole range of emotional experience. And the more we are able to navigate our emotional experience, the more resilient we are, the more depth of experience we have. So I'd like you to consider whether it's possible to say yes to the grief, to allow it, to make space for it, to let those feelings come, to feel those feelings, trusting that they will pass. Many people believe when we allow those emotions, then they will, of their own accord, shift. The mindful experience is about noticing our sensations, whether it's an emotion in the body, or even when it's a thought that results in a feeling. Being able to notice that, acknowledge it. Maybe just putting that thought on a cloud and letting it float away. And our mind has that ability to create thoughts, stories. We can notice them, acknowledge them, and then just come back to the experience of focusing on our breath, observing our experience. And that's a practice that we can practice. I'd like you to consider the words of Thich, Nhat, Hanh. Who said that when people come to his centre, he said, we don't know how long they need to grieve, to express whatever they need to express. But we allow them the time and space that they need. We give them the space they need to take care of their needs. We nurture them and allow them to develop their own ability to nurture themselves. So I shared the acronym RAIN, where R stands for recognize, A stands for acknowledge, I stands for investigate, and N stands for nurture. So I'd like you to consider that you have the capacity to nurture yourself. There is a part of you that has the capacity for wisdom, for compassion, including compassion for yourself, for calm, for pragmatism, and for other qualities that can help you move forward. So I'd like you to consider that you can connect to that part of you. And you can access those resources. And you can access this place of peace whenever you choose. For now, I'd like you to start to get ready to leave this place. As you allow your unconscious mind to learn whatever you choose to learn from this experience. So you can use it to move forwards in your life, making the changes that you choose to make. So I'm going to count from 1 to 5. When I reach 5, either you can just carry on resting, or when you're ready, you can just come back and carry on with your day. So 1, as you breathe in, allowing those calm feelings to flow through your body. 2, bring your awareness to where you are right now. As 3, you now bring your attention to the sounds that you can hear. 4, as you bring your awareness to your body, you can gently move your fingers and toes. Have a gentle stretch. And 5, if you're going to carry on resting, you can just continue to enjoy these relaxing feelings. Otherwise, when you're ready, you can open your eyes, taking your time to come round. So thanks everybody for coming and participating. If you'd like to know more about what I do, just put a comment in the chat. I can send you a video where I talk about the 9 steps I use to help people with MECFS. And you're welcome to have a completely free, no obligation chat if you haven't had one before. But otherwise, I'll say thanks for watching and bye for now.